Hello. It's been a while since I've done one of these. I'm trying to change things up a little bit. Yeah, so a lot of you have probably seen this deck before if you watch any of the gameplay stuff. I think I even did a deck tech once on a very different iteration of this, where I tried to lean a little bit heavier into the potent strategy of the deck. However, here I went with something a little more classical, something I actually did kind of take from somebody else. So before I go forward, I want to just give credit where credit is due. This is a variant of a deck that was in a tournament winning deck. It is a variant of this one by Bruno Pontes. I'm sorry, by Johnson Gone. I never remember exactly how to pronounce the symbol. I deeply apologize. But I liked the general premise of the deck. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that it's doing. So I adapted it into a V5 iteration. I think that this deck has shown a lot of interesting potential. I've had a lot of trouble in testing the deck as to whether or not it is the kind of deck that is having a problem with seeding when I play, having a problem with the vampires, having a problem with the card draws. I don't know that I have the numbers right, but this is one of the decks I feel the most like I'm onto something. And I feel like some of my limitation here, as much as I hate to say it, probably has to do with it being V5, and I'm playing against non V5. So, what you end up with when you're playing against some non V5 decks is just decks that are running things that you in V5 can't account for because it's just not accounted for. You get like the weird one offs that you'll play against, or effects that really probably wouldn't exist in V5 that become very relevant. And here, this is definitely not taking those into consideration. Um, I will say, though, that it has overall been pretty good at doing what it's supposed to do early on. It tends to just get a little bit stymied in some weird positions. And I don't know if that's the cards I'm playing. But basically, we're going for a Mithras vote package. Mithras and a bunch of vampires who are all taking advantage of Dominate, Thaumaturgy, Blood Sorcery, and Fortitude. It's going to be real hard for years to come for me to not call it Thaumaturgy. And also, a little hint of the presence here is still going to take some effect. We are running a set of 5 voter caps and a couple of perfect paragons. You're not really going to be doing the actions with Abraham and Ian that are going to be political unless sort of to finish something off. It's kind of one of the weird parts about how the script is, and one of the things that I'm not sure makes them really like valuable enough in here, especially Abraham. I feel like he's take it or leave it. But yeah, if you can get Mithras down or Carl down or Ian down even and get a Villain down, you're usually pretty good for the rest of it because you should find governs and the governs will lead you to the rest of the vampires. It's really obviously best if you get Mithras. You're running a pair of Mithriums to try to help with that strategy along with, the cultist to try to empower the Mithras strategy in general. The sad part here is like I know this isn't a high tier deck. This isn't really a I don't feel like this will make tournament winning deck. But I also think that it's not zero to do it, right? Like it does take a lot of table finagling, and at V5 there might be a little more that the deck can do to kind of get a table in just the right situation. But I think I'd have to get the numbers a lot tighter there. And that's something that I admittedly struggle with. In the game of VTES, I have been much more an ideas person, coming with neat concepts, interesting themes. But when it comes to how do I put that all together and make something that's playable and winnable, I kind of lose that sometimes in the I just really want to play these cards. And that's kind of what Mithras is. I like this as a conceptual vampire. I like the whole cultist thing. I think that this is such a cool idea conceptually, but the execution is very, very weird, um, and very, very niche. So it's basically just, if you look at it properly, it's just a venture package, or basically, the Carl decks, the Carl Ian decks, with the intercept, just pushed in a new package. It does have great success, though. At times when you can get the table in a position where there's not heavy amount of opposed voting that's next to you, if you can get a cross table ally, you're usually able to kind of handle the table. They might get a couple of your votes voted down, but usually that should only affect you towards the later end of the game. Early on, if you've got good enough control, you should be able to keep it going, because Mithrist's ability is much more relevant than it seems like at times. That one blood starts to add up very, very quickly. You're going to find that like some of this stuff is going to get you exactly what you need. I do feel like in the deck, the Freak drives have been less than valuable here. The multi-act here is kind of an uncertainty for me. It's come in handy sometimes. It's better than having to have an on the QV handy at times to just leave up a vampire. But there's not a lot of other multi-act except maybe the occasional Mithrist bleed. Maybe you might want to try to block something with, Carl from time to time. But you're really kind of looking for actions more than anything else, and I'd say that's kind of weak point. So it's likely the freak drives here are probably not what I want to do, but I've had it work out that the bleed with the occasional freak drive was useful enough. And I really like Rutor's Hand. That's not really good enough reason to play a Rutor's Hand. But I really like Rutor's Hand, so a little bit torn there. If I was gonna probably do anything, these might go out for another Zila's, maybe probably another Govern, because the Govern is another way that the Freak Drive is kind of what you want, but if you've seen some of the videos, you kind of understand where it stalls out. It tends to be things that are like draw problems, and that could just be because my numbers are a little bit strange. Like if we go back to the tournament winning version, it's got way more governs in it, but it does run the Rutors. It's running about the same number of political actions, but it is running a couple of pieces of equipment, and it is going for basically the same modifier package, less freak drives here as well. And yeah, very similar in terms of the reactions and the combat cards. So I don't know, the action economy here feels very weird. Now, I did want to mention, this is, if you're going to do non-V5, this guy is basically an auto-include. He's just, that much worth it. You just put him on the table and you're good. You can suck him dry for all that he's worth and hope you don't get rushed. It's one of the changes I would make here. In fact, there's probably a few. I feel like I really, really, really love, and I never remember the name of it, but I always love to play it when I can. Kisara. It's a pet favorite. You basically find it in most decks where it's not V5. I feel like at some point this should come to V5 as well. I'm not saying it needs it, just personally would love it. Also, outside of V5, the deck could probably benefit from, an ankle cog. But a lot of decks that are running larger cap vampires can usually benefit from an ankle cog. But yeah, otherwise the deck pretty much holds its own pretty well, as long as you're willing to endure. One of the last games I played with this ended up being a pretty solid performance of the deck. So yeah, I think it's well worth playing. I think it's a very interesting deck to play. Again, probably if I were going to make some changes, I might either drop or change the counts on Ian and Abraham. even take him out, maybe find somebody different. If I was going to bring it to non V5, like I said, we drop in Gerald over here because Gerald's just stupid good. Graham is probably a pretty good vampire to toss in as well. He is, numerically kind of where you want him if you're going to drop out Ian. I think both of those give you a better overall crypt, I think, because these two are not quite, what you want in slot. Again, maybe dropping the Rutor's hands. I don't feel like the deck really needs the action economy, but getting an extra bleed out of Mithras is kind of worth it from time to time. The Freak Drive, obviously, maybe drop that to 1 or none. But overall, I think the deck plays pretty well. Any thoughts or opinions? I'm always happy to hear them. I love feedback on this kind of stuff. So, thanks.